Hey everybody, it's a new year and I am excited to start working on some new techniques, and I'm kicking it off right now with this fermented venison summer sausage that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the meat, and I've got a fresh deer hanging outside right now, so I need to clear out some freezer space. So this is what's left of last year's deer. Just some nice clean and lean venison chunks. And here I've got some pork fat, and I've got some belly in there, some shoulder scraps, got even a little bit of bacon tossed in there. And I like to shoot for between 25 and 30% fat content on these sausages. So depending on how meaty some of your fat chunks are, generally speaking, 2 parts lean to 1 part of fat scraps is gonna get you in that range. Now this stuff is all really cold, even partially frozen, so it's ready to grind. And for me, 1 pass through the small plate is gonna be fine for this sausage. This is a 1/8 inch plate, so right around 3 millimeters. But sometimes I'll run a portion of that through a larger plate to get some coarser, more chunky bites in there. But that's something you could play around with and find your own sausage sweet spot. There we go. That is a good looking grind. I'll get this into the refrigerator for now, and we'll work up a spice bill for this one. For this recipe, I'm gonna show you the measurements in percentages, but don't worry, I'll also put a standardized recipe in the comments below. But as you progress in your sausage making, this method of doing things becomes very, very handy. Once you start working with percentages and using metric measurements, the basics are gonna become very, very simple. And that's going to help you to focus on flavoring and crafting your own recipes. You won't have to worry about starting with a specific number of pounds of meat every time. You just weigh up your meat and apply the percentages, and you'll get consistent results every time. And I use different measuring methods in different videos, but I'm sneakily trying to indoctrinate everybody into using metric measurements and percentages, because it's just gonna make your job a whole lot easier. Now, let's take a look at the spice blend for this luscious log. And I'm gonna start with some plain salt, and I'm going 3% salt content on this sausage. I've got my pink cure #1, also known as Prague powder #1. Make sure you're using #1 and not #2. And this goes in at the rate of 0.25%. This is some non-fat powdered milk, which is going to work as the binder, and it's also going to add some lactose to feed the culture that I'm going to add in here. And I'm putting this in at 3.5%. And now for the flavoring spices. Now, some folks want to tell you what you can and can't put in your sausages, but don't pay those sausage suppressors any attention. This is your sausage, so you flavor it any way you like. I've had people tell me you can't put mustard seeds in your bratwurst or juniper berry in your kielbasa, but guess what? I am the king of my own sausage kingdom, and I'll put whatever I like in my sausage, and so should you. You want some paprika in there? Throw it in. Some cayenne or coriander? Go for it. Come up with your own unique and delicious recipes, because that is the beauty of making your own. That being said, I'm going to stay pretty traditional on this recipe to kind of recreate the summer sausage that you're very familiar with. That way you'll have a basic recipe that you can tweak any way you like when you're making your own. So for flavoring, I've got mustard seed, and I like quite a bit of mustard seed in there. And it's one of those things that you can kind of pour in and just eyeball and see where you like it. And for this recipe, I'm going to go in at 0.5%. And I'm going to go at the same rate, 0.5%, on my black pepper. And I'm just going to bust those up with a hammer or something because I want some big, chunky pieces of black peppercorn in there. And now we've got some of the warming spices, the sweet spices as they call them. This is 0.25% of allspice, the same amount of coriander, and just a tiny pinch of ground clove. And this is 0.1%, but normally I just pop a little pinch in there. It's really just sort of a background flavor. And I gotta get some garlic in there, so I'm also using 0.25% garlic powder. In the past, when I've made sausages like this one that are supposed to have a tart flavor, I've used this encapsulated citric acid, and it works very well. You just use the directions on the package to figure out how much to put in there, and make sure you're using encapsulated citric acid and not just the powdered citric acid that you might use when you're canning tomatoes. This stuff has a little coating on it that's designed to break down when your sausage hits a specific temperature. So if you're using just powdered citric acid and you put that in there too early, it's going to start to eat away at your meat and give it a kind of a mushy texture, whereas this will just break open once it hits the smoker and get you right where you want to be. But today I'm not going to use the citric acid. I'm going to be using natural fermentation to get that sour flavor. And I'm going to get the fermentation started by adding this prepared culture. This is Back to Firm LHP starter culture, and this particular culture is for fast ferments like the summer sausage. Now make sure you do a little research and you get the right culture for the sausage you're making. Now, as that culture grows and ferments the sausage, the pH will drop, and that's going to raise the acidity and give it a tangy taste. Now, the longer this ferments, the more acidic and sour it's going to taste, at least until it eats up all the available food it has in your sausage mix. And a lot of times you'll use dextrose, a basic sugar, to feed your bacteria in your sausage. But this particular culture also eats lactose, and I think there'll be plenty of lactose in the powdered milk to feed this as it ferments. Now, I'm aiming for a pH of 5 or just below, and using this culture and letting it ferment at the right temperature, it should take about 48 hours to get there. And a pH meter is a very handy tool to have for this, but it's not 100% necessary. This packet of culture can do something like 400 pounds of sausage, and I'm not even close to that. But the instructions say that for any batch of sausage under 100 pounds, use a quarter of the packet, which is 14 grams. You want to store this in the freezer, and then 20 or 30 minutes before you're going to mix up your sausage, you want to thaw it out and kind of wake it up in just a little bit of bottled or dechlorinated water. Let's go ahead and get that starter culture warming up. I'll throw in about a half a cup of water here. We'll get that down in there. Whoops! Give that a little stir. It's a lot like proofing your yeast when you're baking some bread. Even smells like it. Now I'll get this sealed up and right back into the freezer for next time. Now I'll go ahead and get all my dry ingredients mixed up. All right, I think we're ready to go here. loading this up. Now you want to mix this up until it has a real shaggy look to it and it's very sticky. That's telling you you've got some good protein extraction, and that's going to help to give you a nice tight bind in your sausage. And if you're doing this by hand, it is hard, cold, and painful work. You got to mix the heck out of it, but hopefully it's worth it. Now this is ready to go, so now let's lock and load and stuff this savory stick. Now you want to get your corn pop and poke these just all over, just pierce that casing. Get some air in there. And with the last bit of that sausage mix, I got this little test chode, and I'll use this guy to test this out before I go to the smoker. I've had to make a couple of modifications to the sausage closet for this one to make the environment in there suitable for fermentation. So I need to add heat and humidity. And to control that, I've got a couple of these little Inkbird Controllers. These are really handy plug-and-play devices. You just hang the sensor into whatever chamber you're trying to control, plug your humidifier or your heater into the Inkbird, plug the Inkbird into the wall, and then you set the humidity or the temperature, and this will control it by cycling your heater or your humidifier on and off, and it'll hold that right where you want it. And I'll put a link for these down in the comments in case you're interested in getting set up for this. Now we're hanging out in the sausage closet. Look down here, there's my heat. Here's my humidifier. Got just a small circulating fan. And we're going to let these ferment in here for 1 or 2 days. I'll check on that little test chode here and there when my pH gets down to 5 or just below. Then we'll move on to the smoker.
1 winter later.
Here we are after 2 days in the sausage closet. I did have a little bit of trouble keeping the humidity as high as I liked in here, but I think we probably did all right. And Eventually I'll move this stuff out of the sausage closet into an old refrigerator or something that's a little more well insulated. So let's go ahead on our little test chode over here. Get us a pH check. Oh yeah, we're well under 5. That's going to be pretty tart, but that's good. It's not only it's going to taste good, but that acidity is also really going to extend the shelf life of these. Now these are already fairly warm and the casings are pretty dry from hanging out in here, so I'm not going to need to do any more drying out in the smoker, so we'll take them right to a 140 degree smoker, and I'm already running some water down in the water pan. Alright, let's get some smoke into these guys. So, I've moved these out into the smoker, and I'm currently running at 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to bring these up to temperature very gradually. And one reason for that is so that they cook evenly. If I go right into a hot smoker, they're going to cook more quickly, but the outside will be done much sooner than the center, and they can develop a kind of tough rind. Another reason for that is that the lower temperatures, below around 170 degrees, allow the smoke to penetrate into the sausage, giving it a deep, deep smokiness. Once that temperature passes 170, the outside will harden and dry, and that's only going to collect smoke on the outside, so they'll still have smoke flavor. But when the smoke really has a lot of time to get into the meat at low temperature, you get a much more flavorful meat stick. Now these are some pretty girthy sausages, so they could take a hearty dose of smoke. So my smoke schedule for these will be 1 hour at 130 degrees, followed by 2 hours at 140, then 2 hours at 150, after which I'll raise the temperature up to 180 degrees to finish them off to an internal temperature of 155. But anywhere between 150 and 160 internal will make for a great sausage. And it's going to be well after dark when these are finished out here, so the next time you'll see these is going to be in the ice bath. There we go, check that out. Nice and plump, they're all smooth, they're not all wrinkled up. And if you want them to stay that way, you gotta get them cooled off quickly. That's why I use the ice bath. That's gonna stop any carryover cooking and keep these guys looking just like you want them. So now I just leave them in here until they start to get cool all the way down into the center, and then we'll hang them up to dry one more time, and then we'll be done. Oh, it's a busy day here in the sausage closet. And now these guys can just hang out here until they get dry and up to room temperature, and then I can vacuum seal them and pack them in the refrigerator. They'll be good in there for months, or in the freezer they're going to be good almost indefinitely, or until they freeze or burn. But if you fancy a drier sausage, because of the acidity and the cure, these can hang out at room temperature for a good long time. So if you want to leave them out here for a few days or even a week and dry them out a bit more, they'll concentrate in flavor. The texture will be a little more dense. And if that's your thing, go ahead and let them hang. But it's time to say goodnight to these guys, and we will try them out tomorrow. There we go. Looks good, nice tight casing, no fat on the outside or in between the casing and the meat. Now let's get inside of this and see how it looks. Alright, well, it looks pretty good. I can see some mustard seeds, and it looks like we got good grain on that one. Of course, what really matters is the taste. let's finally see how we did. Check out that bite. Oh yeah. Now that is everything a good summer sausage is supposed to be. It's got a great firm texture and a real nice mouthfeel. That flavor is spot on. There's a nice hit of black pepper and there's a little crunch left in some of those bigger cracked peppercorns. And it's got a good pop of mustard from the mustard seeds. Combined with the tart flavor from the fermentation, it almost tastes like there's a little smear of mustard built right in. And it's not too greasy at all. Got the fat balance just right. That is so good. I absolutely love fermenting foods, and I am stoked on this fermented sausage. And now that I'm getting my fermenting and aging chamber set up, the world is my wiener. So stay tuned, and we're gonna learn this stuff together. And in the meantime, I really hope you try this, and I know you're gonna love it. Thanks for watching.